Hello. In the Crown of Aragon, 639 years ago, it was February 1st, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is the Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Moltcara Compagnona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. Let's begin today's document. There's a couple documents to choose from for February 1st, and today's document is from the Officialium Register, so it's not at that level of the secret seal, but we're going to get into some interesting seal conversations in just a little bit, and of course, I have gone so many days of talking about seals on this podcast while suppressing my desperate urge to make a pun about seals. So I just can't help myself. Gotta say it today. When we are talking about seals, we are not talking about the animal. So, yeah. I used to, in class when I was a teacher, whenever the word seal came up, I would do the little seal bark. Hor, hor, hor. It would be pretty funny. Everyone just loved my puns when I was a teacher. Any of my former students listening to this, you can vouch for that. All right, we will be talking about seals. Did you hear that? The seal bark? No, because I resisted the urge to do it. We will be talking about them later. Let's first start out with another fun observation about today's document, which is that there's another document squished in to this page. Like someone at a later time in April came back and squished it. It's so interesting why they felt the need to do this. When I see all the time these registers, there's earlier documents being referenced. So it's very typical in one document to have a line about, oh yes, in our letter of such and such earlier date. So why was it that a chancery scribe felt the need in this situation to do something pretty uncommon, which is to put this note squeezed into the space that is normally left unmarked between two documents? And try as I might, my friends, I could not figure out what was so special about this particular document. So, living up to the motto of the podcast, dissatisfaction guaranteed, let's talk about the sourcing of this, and we can maybe make some guesses about why this particular document merited the intrusion of this additional later update. This document is in the Officialium of Joan, and so that is the place where there are commissions made for particular offices. So someone will be appointed to some role, some job in the Crown of Aragon somewhere. The person who is being addressed for the office is Johan del Moli. That's the person who's getting the office. The recipient of the document, I believe, is a set of people who are in charge of the castle of Perpignan, but it's kind of hard for me to make out because something has been crossed out in the first line, and what was written above it is hard to make out. Something about maybe the custodians of the castle. The other thing that gets really confusing about this letter and its addressee is that there's this phrase that begins the second line, Nore castru nostri vie Perpignan. So that would seem to read our castle of our city of Perpignan. That seems pretty straightforward. But then in the squished in part, in line 3, there's N-O-R-A, which I guess could mean Nostra. And that's what ChatGPT was really convinced of, because I went to the AI chatbot for help with this document, because that N-O-R-A doesn't seem to make grammatical sense, but maybe it does, and it's just a little bit beyond my ability to read medieval Catalan at this time. So the sentence that includes that capital N-O-R-A in the squished in April update part of this document is de la donatio quel Signor Rey he ha feta de la Nora del Castel de Perpignan. And then after that, I think we've got... It's hard to see what that... Oh, it's N. N. Johan del Moli. And then a little bit more. So EN is like saying Mr. or Sir. And so when you see EN in front of somebody's name, it's just like saying Mr. It could be more honorific, like it could be at the level of Sir. I'm not quite sure the rules for that EN, because I see it a lot, and I see it in front of different people who have different levels of status. So another open question there. What's happening in this letter, this document, is that Joan is appointing a Johan del Moli to be some kind of custodian in the castle at Perpignan. And honestly, I'm having some trouble figuring out what else there is to it besides that. I plugged the whole thing into ChatGPT. Seems like the chatbot boils it down to just that, but there's a lot more verbiage here, and also there's the update. So the letter, the original letter on the page is from February 1st. The little update is from April 1st, and someone else is mentioned in the update. At the beginning of the update, you have Le Duc as the person who's sending the letter. So is it from Marti? Because yes, Marti is involved in this somehow. In the third line of the February 1st letter, you see Infantis Martini. That's Joan's brother Marti. He's the Duke of Montblanc. So maybe this is actually coming from Marti, saying that this actually did happen, that action was executed, and he was following up with this other person named, I think, something like Galcon Dorngace. It's hard to tell what's happening. One thing I can say, though, is that I successfully remembered the abbreviation for Juxta. It's in the second to the last line of the February 1st portion of what we're talking about today. And the sentence reads, Juxta predicte commissionis carte serviam et tenorem. And this is a very standard expression, as I learned from the chatbot that told me. And I think it's, a reliable thing to claim that this is seen a lot. Basically means that last part, this serviam et tenorem, it's form and tenor. So when you use the word juxta at the beginning, we're not quite saying next to, we're saying in accordance with, in the understanding with. The understanding is what is proximate here, as opposed to the way we would use the word juxtaposition, putting two things next to each other. So what this is saying is that here we have a commission that has been aforesaid, predictem commissionis, in the letter. And so according to the form and tenor of the aforesaid letter of commission. So that particular phrase I feel very confident about. And everything else, it's the understanding is a little squishy, but something about this Johan del Moli, who I could not find any more information about through various attempts to research, not just through the chatbot, but also Googling around and so forth. And also what was going on with the Perpignan Castle doesn't seem to have had any major historically significant transitions. And also why Marti is involved in all of this. It seems like someone has been doing a good job for Marti, and I think it's Johan del Moli, and that's why Johan del Moli is getting this commission. So after working with this letter a bit, I think I can fit this into the ongoing theme of Team Next Gen, where they're working as a team, Joan, Violante, Marti, and to an extent Maria de Luna, and they're making decisions together based on each other's recommendations. They're reinforcing the network connections that they've all brought in the time in the lead up to this moment of the major changeover from the staff, administration, institutional behavior of Père the Ceremonious to this new reign. And they're bringing their people in, they're making changes, and I think we see another example of that in this document here. All right. One other thing I want to mention before we get to the discussion of the seals. Look at February in the last line of the February 1st letter. It has two F's. Also, if you look at the top of this folio, there's the end of another letter that was written on the first day of February. You can see that in that letter at the top of the page, the last line of it has Barcinone, which is the Latin form of Barcelona. And then PMA, and there's just, it's easy to miss, but there is that curving macron over the P for PRI, Primera. And then DA, de February. Two F's. So they really liked to double the F when it was a proper noun. when it was the name of a person, or in this case, the name of the month. So I think we'll pretty much always see the month of February spelled with 2 F's. If this month we come across any instances where there's only 1 F for February, that's going to be really interesting, and that could be a quirk of that particular scribe. And I mean, I think that would be interesting, because clearly we've got a pretty set convention to double the F if we've got a proper noun that begins with an F. Let's talk about the seals. So did you do the little sound of the seal? All right. In the document from the 1st of February, we have the seal mentioned, and where is it? Sigillo Nostro. It's in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line. Nope, sorry. Yeah, 5th line down. 5th line down. Sigillo Nostro. So they're mentioning in there which seal is being used for this. And then we have it again at the very last line. The thing that I want to point out, I think it's only in the little note, and this gets super hard to read. So what is part of the little addendum from April and what is part of the original? It's getting a little bit confused on the right side of the paper, because we have the year from the last line's date. So looking at Die Primera February, and then we have Anno a Nativitat Domini, and then we've got the Roman numerals for 1380, and then Septimo on the next line. And then what we have is something else, which I'm not quite sure. It looks like almost a double F right there. And then if we kind of just go right across on the bottom of that line, then we see some writing that I think is actually part of the April note, but you can make out suo sigillo annuli, and then something that looks like sigillarum. So this is the ring, okay? The seal of the ring. We talked about this in yesterday's episode, and it comes back, this idea of the seal of the ring, in the last line of what was added in April. So if you look at the last line of the smaller handwriting, it comes, you can kind of track it because the next letter starts with Nos Johannes. So right above that, if you read along, it is saying que, I think that's la te scri, something, scrius, and then I think that's Barcelona again. Then we've got a clear primera dia, this is in Catalan, de abril, first day of April. And then we've got something that's really hard to read. We've got a couple words that are hard to read, but then it's a clear segel de nostra. It's abbreviated. You can see the NRE. And then I think that could be, again, another annel. It does look like the first letter is A, and then what comes after it might not be an L, it might not be an N, but then we do have the L's. So I think we've got a mention of the ring in association with the seal, but it's iffy. It is iffy. Okay. I am not going to push this as like a certain interpretation here. But just because in yesterday's episode we saw that letter from January 6th when Violante is sending Joan the rings that are associated with, at least one of the rings is associated with the seal. And now here we've got this mention of maybe a certain type of seal that's associated with a ring. But it could just be I'm primed for that, and there's actually some kind of other meaning here for these words that I'm trying to read as related to anel, the word for ring. Okay, that brings us to the end of this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt Cara Compagnona. Thanks for listening. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, I have done my job, and how could you not after this particular episode? And all of this, remember, is covered by our promise here at the Historian's Notebook of dissatisfaction guaranteed. Visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes. And listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Johan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. In the meantime, take care.